One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Paranoid or perspective?
It's time for you to decide.
Before we get into today's episode, we need to remind you that what you hear on our podcast is purely opinion-based and for entertainment purposes only.
Please be sure to do your own research and form your own opinions while listening at your own discretion.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Paranoid Perspectives with Dallas and Nellie. On today's episode, we will be discussing the conspiracies and our opinions on the moon landing. Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon back in July 20th of 1969, or so we were told. Today we're going to dive into the Apollo program, the mysterious flying flag on the moon, shadows in the photographs from the Apollo 11 team's time on the moon, and why man has not been back to the moon since the Apollo program.
All right, so as you guys heard, we're going to be starting off today's show with the Apollo program. The Apollo program ran by NASA from 1961 to 1972, and their main objectives were to establish space technology, achieve U.S. space dominance, and explore the moon specifically.
At their peak, they had billions of dollars in funding and employed over 400,000 people.
Wow.
So it was a big program. It was like a big deal.
I read somewhere actually that I was going to bring it up later in the show, but they actually invested $25.4 billion into this program. And today when I was doing my research, today that would be the equivalent of like $318 billion. That's insanity.
That's nuts.
That's a lot of money.
Wow.
But I mean, you got to think it ran for 11 years, so
yeah,
a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources.
I don't know, is that what the correct term? Spaceships?
Space shuttle?
Space shuttles?
Yeah.
The objects that we fly into outer space.
Yep.
They are like one-time uses. So if you fly that up there, there's no it doesn't come down, which we could talk about this later too, but I think that's one of Elon Musk's points because he wants to, bring all the space shuttles and stuff back, and he wants to find a way to have reusable ones. Yep. Because back in the day when they did this, so what, they had 6 times where they went out there in the Apollo program.
Yep.
And each time they have to have a whole new shuttle, which is super expensive, that flies out there.
Yep.
Or shoots out there, however that works.
Launches.
Yeah, launches. There we go. Yeah, so the spaceships launch into space, and when they return, they're not you can't piece them back together and reuse them.
No, right, because, they're going through millions of degrees
hell
of
and
heat.
back.
Yeah.
Literally.
Right. It's quite the trip to get up into space. Yeah. So, yeah, those things take a beating.
I just have, maybe we should finish talking about this, because I have, so many different tangents and rabbit holes that I could just, we can get off track so fast.
Yeah.
So
let's save it for the closing thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, let's save it for the closing thoughts. Let's get through everything, and then at the end, we'll give you guys
I'll try to stay on track the best I can.
Yeah. We'll end it with our closing thoughts, and you can go on all your tangents there. Is that fair?
Okay. I'll try my best.
Okay.
So continuing with the Apollo program, it was created because, one of the reasons was JFK gave a speech in 1961 stating the U.S. would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Also, it was a direct response to the Cold War space race between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Yep. The U.S. was solely focused on beating the Soviet Union into space, which they successfully did.
Which is a good reason to fake it.
Correct. It's always the U.S. and Russia. That freaking USSR, man. So from what I was reading, the missions for the Apollo program were divided into categories based on their objectives, like lunar orbit, lunar landings, and scientific investigations. Mm-hmm. So the entirety of the Apollo program, from what I understood, was just based off of, yes, being the first ones in space, but solely focused on all things the moon.
So they brought back 842 pounds of moon rock between all 6 of the missions total.
Yep.
So that was a big point of it, is getting moon rock and, I guess, studying it.
Yep.
Which I don't know how you study a rock, but I'm not a scientist.
Did you happen to write down what all Apollo missions made it to the moon? I have 12, 14, 15, and 17, and then also obviously Apollo 11. But that's all I have, so that's 5.
They successfully achieved its goal with Apollo 11 in 69. with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
Yep.
Became the first humans to walk the moon. The
Yep.
program continued with several more missions, but after Apollo 17 in 1972, manned moon landings were discontinued due to high costs and shifting priorities.
Yep, that's what I had too. I just want to make sure that I had all of them right. But what I did find too, that there were actually 2 Apollo missions that failed. The Apollo 1 mission in 1967, and then the Apollo 13 mission in 1970. Those 2 both failed.
I'm trying to remember the word. They were the word that when I was reading about, they said that they were successful failures. So no, they did not make it, but the astronauts on board made it back safely. So that's why
Yes.
they called it a successful failure. So the mission itself
I think that was
failed.
Apollo 13.
Okay. So the mission itself was a failure, but it was successful that they were able to bring them home safely.
Yes. So, like we were saying earlier, the Soviets, we were in a space race with the Soviet Union. And in many ways, the Soviet Union actually did beat us in a lot of things, considering space, but not landing on the moon. So, like, they were, starting the space station and all these other different things in space way before we were. But the moon, I think the moon was kind of like the key point. That's what we wanted. We wanted the moon. That was one thing that they were not going to take from us. And here we are talking about conspiracy of the moon landing.
That's why we faked it, allegedly.
Right, allegedly, in my opinion.
I believe that's one of the reasons, a great reason. I mean, we don't have space. We didn't have space stations. We didn't have any of that stuff. And somehow they were years in advance above us.
Yep.
But somehow we were able to beat them. But you know what? That's what they told us.
Yep. Do as we say, not as we do. You know what I'm saying? Well, I think that gives us a little bit of backstory. Should we track on to our second point?
Yeah, works for me. So our second point is, let's start off with our first theory.
We're going in with a bang here.
Oh yeah. The theory that the moon landing was staged in a studio, which is probably the biggest conspiracy.
Oh, 100%.
The number one for this topic, I guess.
Yeah. And I think when people think of conspiracy theories, this is like one that sticks out the most is the moon landing.
It comes
just
up a lot.
Because I feel like you're either you believe it or you don't. Like there is no in between. You're on one side or you're on the other.
There's a lot of people that never even question it when they bring it up. They look at you like, what is wrong with you? Why would you, you don't believe that we landed on the moon?
No, right. Oh, there's the conspiracy theorist again.
Yeah.
Yep, here we are.
And I was one of those people. I was always like, I grew up, I always believed in the moon landing. I never even thought about it. Like, they told us we did this.
Right.
Cool.
This is what happened. It's in my history book.
Yeah, it also didn't happen during my lifetime.
No, right.
So it's not something that I was able to, like you said, I was taught about it in school. But yeah, I wasn't around for it, so I didn't witness it firsthand. So I just kind of blindly followed. And then I picked up a book on conspiracies one time, and the first topic that was in there was the moon landing. And I'm like, here we go. But then it had a bunch of links to videos, which are a lot of them are actually taken down now, but a lot of them were like evidence videos on YouTube, and there's a lot of other sources on there.
Yep.
But once you actually start looking into it a little bit, the more you look at it, the more it seems fake.
Yeah. The more you dive deeper into it, the more you're like, oh, okay.
The less it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it really just, it does not make sense at all. Everything that they tell you, everything that I see, it's just, I could talk about this for hours. My mind is just like...
Yeah, there's so many thoughts, and it's like trying to collect them.
Yeah.
Is a bit insane.
And it's hard, too, because some of the stuff, it's like, okay, I could see how that could happen. Or there's a lot of things that I don't believe in it, but there's some stuff which I will talk about as we go through these. Yep. But NASA has their reasonings. Oh, well, I don't believe, I believe it was done in a studio because look at the lighting. And then NASA has their reasoning for it.
All right.
And then I hear it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So then in my head, I'm like, okay, am I dumb because I'm sitting here and I'm like contradicting myself? Like, I don't believe it's real, but then maybe it actually is real. And what NASA is saying is making sense. Why am I going against them?
Right. Which, I mean, too, like, in your defense, the government also told us for the longest time that aliens weren't real.
And then
all of a sudden, documents start getting released, and lo and behold, oh, there is something else out there.
It was like all over the news the past 2 years, and not one person said like, dude, aliens are real. They're like this has been something that's going on for years. Everyone's always been like, aliens, it's in movies, and now that like the government's like, oh yeah, they're real, everyone's like, yeah, whatever, next.
Yep.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. No,
we're not going to make a big old deal about the aliens? Come on.
No, right, literally.
Another episode.
No, another episode for sure, but I was actually gotta plug my favorite guy, Sean Ryan, the Sean Ryan
Love
Show.
Sean Ryan. You got me hooked.
Sean Ryan, if you wanna like collab with us, or if you just wanna like send me a hat or something.
Yeah, you want sponsors? You want to come on our podcast?
Right. No,
I'll make you dinner.
But seriously, so I was watching one of his episodes with Chris Bledsoe, and he was talking about how he's like had all these encounters with these extraterrestrials and all this stuff, and I feel like a lot of people like discredit the conspiracy theorists, or like, you know, people like this guy who's talking about, you know, having these experiences with these extraterrestrials, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, he's crazy. And like, to an extent, yes, I get it, right? Like, I'm kind of like 50-50 about it, but then at the same time, he's saying all this stuff and he's like, look it up, look it up. I have the videos at home. Look it up. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a little creepy for me.
If you got actual evidence.
Right. So I feel like that's kind of like how the moon landing is too. Like, it's so 50-50, and I just don't think that we're ever going to know, actually, because it's so tight-lipped.
Yeah.
And I mean, even too, like, when I was doing my research, I think it was Buzz Aldrin. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was Buzz Aldrin, but somebody confronted him about the moon landing being fake, and he literally punched him in the face.
Oh, yeah. There was an interview, which I didn't see it, but I hear a lot about it, that he did, and he seemed really weird and, like, cagey about it.
Yeah.
And even when, like, after they came back and they were being successful, he was being the same way, like, weird and cagey and acting odd, and everyone said, like, he was not acting the way you would expect someone who just came back from walking on the moon. Like, you were one of the first people to ever walk on the moon, and he's coming back like he's hiding something.
Like, you would think you would be, like, euphoric after that.
Yeah.
That's a literally once in a lifetime thing. You will never get another chance of that.
One theory that I have heard that kind of defends his actions or his demeanor is that maybe they encountered something when they were out there.
Oh, maybe.
And it shook him up so much that he was acting weird, and that's why he kind of like lost it a little bit.
Yeah.
Which would make sense. I mean, could you imagine being shot out of our universe into another planet, walking on it? Who knows what's... I mean, I first of all, you cannot pay me enough money to leave this planet.
Absolutely not.
I'm
too claustrophobic for that.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine, like...
No.
And you can't go home quickly.
I don't want to.
No.
I'd rather die.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It just like gives me chills thinking about, like, if you want to, like, okay, I'm done. I want to get out. I want to go home. It's like, no, you can't. You're in another planet.
No, right.
And then you're out there, and then, like, it's dark. You don't know what's going on. Yeah. There's no, like, someone turn on the light. Oh, no. It's just like
you are alone.
You better hope the sun points on us a little bit because that's all you got.
Yeah. No. The astronaut life didn't call me, and I'm sure as heck not calling it.
If they ever get to the point where they, like, have the, like, shuttles where people could, like, do vacations like a cruise ship, but they could do it to the moon.
Like Jeff Bezos was doing, like, taking people with him. Or Elon did it, and I think Jeff Bezos took a ride or something like that.
To the moon?
Yeah, like they
they did, like, space ones, didn't they?
Yeah, they launched them into space, but then they didn't, like, get out or, like, do anything.
Yeah, they didn't leave,
but they came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like same day.
Yeah. See, even that would freak me out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able
to. But I've seen, or maybe it's just like movies, but people have talked about that before too. Like, oh, one day we're going to get to that kind of technology where it's like, it would just be like buying a cruise, but instead, like, you hop on a giant ship, they bring us up there, and you hang out in space for a few days and just, like, party it up and come back down to Earth.
Absolutely not. Can you imagine clubs in space? No, thank you.
Space clubbing?
A space bar. Honestly, good concept. Hey, we should start it.
If they ever get out there to that point, let's buy some property in space.
Okay, bet.
It reminds me of, like, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just be out there in our little things, and it's like, oh, you want to go to Jupiter today? Okay.
But.
Which also, I don't know a lot about planets. And I was joking with my husband the other day because I was telling him we were doing this.
Yeah.
And he's big on, like, he believes the moon landing happened. Like,
yeah.
But he's not a conspiracy theorist. He's like, that's what they told us. It is what it is.
Right. He's like, I believe it.
And I'm like, it's because the government told you.
No,
and I was like, if the government came out on the news and they're like, hey, we captured Jupiter. It's in a building in D.C. Would you be like, oh, yeah, that's what they told us? And he's like, no, because Jupiter is, like, the biggest planet out there. It's way bigger than Earth. It wouldn't fit here. So, of course. And I was like, no, literally. Oh, I'm like, well, what's the small planet then?
I'm dead.
Isn't it like Pluto?
Pluto is.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, what about that one? But, like,
they're saying Pluto's not even a planet anymore. So then after Pluto, it'd probably be Mars.
Which, aren't they both still bigger than Earth?
Smaller than Earth? Yes.
They're smaller than Earth.
Yes.
So we could capture Pluto and bring it here.
Could. That's your best bet. If you're gonna capture a planet, you might want to do it with Pluto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know enough about space. Like, you can't tell me where things line up. I'm not a...
You never heard the My Very Excellent Mother served us 9 pizzas?
Huh?
What? That must be a public school thing. My very excellent mother served us 9 pizzas. Mars, Venus, Earth, Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto.
No.
Yeah, that's a way to remember the planet order.
It just made me...
It was on a test, so I had to memorize it, and it just never left my brain.
I don't remember that I even had to memorize the planets in school. But that just reminded me of the acronym that I had to learn in math, which I don't remember what it was.
PEMDAS.
But it was... Which one?
PEMDAS or PEDMAS.
I was thinking of the other one where it's like Sally something, but it's subtract, add, multiply, divide. Sammed? That's not what it is. What is it? Oh,
it's PEMDAS.
I'm also not a math person. Like I'm out myself. I was in basic math in high school. Like I did not test into regular math. I was in like the class where like the people needed help. There was like a quarter of the kids in my class as there is in like normal math classes. Like I'm not a math person. So
poor Nelly.
Whatever this PEMDAS is.
Yeah, it's like parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, addition, subtraction.
Did you just write that out?
Yeah. So that way I knew. Okay. It was like the Earth order or like the planet order. It was throwing me off. I might have missed one because I was trying to do it in my head. But anyways, we're on a tangent. We got to get back here. We got to reel it in.
Yeah. Okay. Reel it in. So back to the moon landing.
The moon landing being staged in a studio.
Oh yeah. Well, my first point that I had on this was basically that some people believe NASA filmed the landing in a Hollywood-style set, which some people also say that it was possibly directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Okay.
The only reason for that is because he came out with a movie right before all of this. It was released in 1968, but it was called 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I guess in that movie, the graphics and everything, it looks so realistic. It was like the first movie of that kind that people were like, they hired him to film that because it was so realistic looking. He knows what he's doing. Yep. But then there's also another theory that he released that movie so that he had like a practice run to see if people, what they said, if people thought it was really believable, they'll be like, okay, now we'll film the moon landing, and people believe it because they saw his movie and they were like, wow, that's so lifelike.
Wow. That's interesting. I didn't come across that.
But also, like, according, which I don't know how, if you want to follow Wikipedia, but if you follow Wikipedia, it says the year after, so 1968 is when this movie was released. 1969, he left the U.S., moved out of country.
Wonder why.
So, like, what if they pre-filmed it? I don't know.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. See, and everything that you learn about this, it's like, you just have to take a second and just, like, really think about it and soak it in, and you're like, wow, like, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Like, that could be, but then everything that, like, playing devil's advocate here, like, everything that the devil's advocate would say is like, oh yeah, well, that could also be.
Yeah, and there's so many theories on it too. Like, so just this one theory has so many different rabbit holes and tangents and other people's explanations and theories that break off of it.
Yep.
I feel a lot of it is like, when you were a kid, you ever play Chinese telephone?
Yep.
Like, you all sit in the classroom, and then you'll be like, have one phrase that you say, and by the time it comes back around, it doesn't even sound like that.
Right.
So there's the one theory, someone tells someone else, and then it just branches off, and then people like make their own little make-believe stuff, and now we have a million theories that are all based off the same ones.
Right. No, for sure. So one of the main points that I wanted to actually touch on was I found on BBC Science Focus, and they made a good point, and they said, if Neil Armstrong was the first to walk on the moon, who held the camera while he was going down the steps?
I saw that too. But devil's advocate, one of the theories I heard, they did multiple things that they already had, I don't know what the devices are called. They already had like technology and devices on the moon that's been landed out there before man walked on the moon.
Okay.
So one of the things was they had a camera, I guess, type thing that was already landed on the moon ahead of time and filmed it. The biggest issue on this was getting the timing right, because especially technology back then. So the camera was kind of like there was a guy on Earth who was controlling it, moving it up
like
and
a
down.
rover.
Yeah. So you know how, because if you watch it, like, you could see him coming down, and then the same thing, like when it takes off afterwards, you could see the camera like pan up and follow the shuttle thing take off the moon. So there's a man on Earth who had to control it.
Right.
But there's a delay. So like if you call someone on the phone, back then there was like a 3-second delay if you were in another country. So like if you called someone in Russia, you'd be like, hey, how's it going? 1, 2, 3. And then they would hear it on the other end.
Right.
So then you have to think all the way to the moon. What kind of a delay is that? And
And getting that timing just right from when they are taking off to knowing when to pan that camera up.
Yeah. So that's the theory that I heard, which
Yeah.
is that NASA has that rover camera out there. There's a man on the Earth, and they calculated it to about a 12-second delay. So they said, okay, we're going to take off in, at this time exactly. So then back on home, they're like, okay. And then he counted down 12 seconds ahead of time to do, would it be ahead or after? I think ahead. He would hit the button, they take off, and then the camera would actually hit it 12 seconds. So get it at this correct timing.
Yeah. But then how would you know that if you don't practice? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you know what your delay is? You don't know until you get there.
It's all weird. Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that one doesn't
see me. And I don't know if that was someone's theory or if that was NASA's explanation. But and there's always either they have a defense for it or someone else has a defense for it. There's so many different for every question. There's an answer so that you could always debunk someone's crazy theories.
Mm-hmm. So what I read, my side of the devil's advocate, is that NASA actually mounted a camera on the descent stage of the lunar module. So apparently there's some special piece of the shuttle that they mounted that helps them with the descent. So they mounted the camera onto that. But then my biggest thing is I saw everywhere that supposedly the flag blew over when they were taking off again. So if the flag is blowing over that they just planted on the moon because of the force of the engines taking off from the moon, and also you're going through all of these different the layers that you have to get through from Earth to get to the moon. Do you know what I'm saying?
The Van Allen belts and all that stuff? Yeah.
Yes. So how is a camera going to survive that?
That's my thought. That's exactly what I was going to ask. You're telling me they're going to go through that and the camera's nothing's going to happen to the camera, especially with technology from back in the day. I feel like it wasn't as...
No, it definitely was not as advanced as it is today.
Well, and that was one of the other things, too, that people said was the original moon landing video was very cinematic for its time.
Yeah.
Which almost makes people believe that it was filmed in a studio.
Yeah. And another point that I saw on PBS was that they were talking about that if the moon landing was actually faked, and it was recorded in a studio, it should have been filmed at 30 frames per second. And actually what the footage is, even though we don't have the actual footage anymore and it's all from third parties, which also sus.
Yeah.
If it was in a studio, it should have been 30 frames per second, and it was actually 10 frames per second, the videos that we have. So that's kind of...
Is that something you would use for broadcasting?
I don't know. That's just another little piece that people are saying to debunk it, but I don't know. I just think that
that's another issue.
Technology was not that advanced back then.
This is back in the late 60s, early 70s.
No, right.
People barely had TVs. They didn't have this is very, very early, that type of technology. Yep. So live broadcasts and all that stuff, they're not very clear. You're telling me you could barely report the news from down the street, but you could go on the moon and you could broadcast it live and everyone could sit down on Earth and be like, oh yeah, we're on the moon.
No, right.
They can't
No, exactly. And it's at this point, so what? It got to Apollo 11 before they finally figured out how to make a shuttle that would get through all of the belts to get to the moon. But then they still had missions failing after that. So you're telling me you can make a camera that lasts that whole entire trip, doesn't explode, nothing happens to it. It's good to go, still able to record, but yet you still can't make a shuttle to safely get humans to space.
Yeah.
The technology just wasn't there then.
It does not make sense at all.
No.
So one theory that I heard, and it's kind of just a supporting theory of the fact that it was done in a studio, and they, I guess, allegedly have proof that it couldn't have actually happened. They couldn't have gone to the moon because they said that they took off. They were supposedly there for 3-4 days, and then they came back. Everyone celebrated.
Yep.
Within those days, someone saw Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin in Vegas gambling, showgirls on their arms, having a good old jolly time.
Did their wives know?
I guess not.
Wow.
And I have a hard time with this theory Because, one, if people saw them, I feel like words would travel fast. If you were supposed to be in the moon and you're telling all this, you would not be seen in public. You would not go off and be like, oh, yeah, like I'm supposed to be on, you guys are all watching me on TV tomorrow.
Unless they pulled the CIA with JFK.
Oh.
Plot thickens.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was one of the things that I heard, and everyone, and that was like this theory's reason on, I guess, supporting evidence of the fact that it was filmed.
Yeah.
Their theory on that was based to, I guess, they filmed that we were about to take off for the moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
Astronauts were in there. They do all the filming. They had like a secret door. They left the spaceship. Spaceship takes off. Everyone thinks the astronauts are on there. Yep. They fly them to the desert.
Oh.
Film it in the desert. And then, so that's why they were in Vegas.
Yeah.
Because they were in Vegas partying it up.
Yep.
Then they go back the next day. They film them on the desert, which is like them walking in the moon.
Yep.
Then they fly them to Hawaii.
Oh.
And that's where the shuttle lands, and they get all their stuff, and then everyone's like, oh, yeah, they landed back on Earth, and everyone's like, so they never actually went, and that was how they faked it. Which, there is an actual movie, and I don't know the name of the movie.
Is there video of the shuttle coming down in Hawaii?
I don't know. Maybe we should look that up.
That'd be a good little...
So, I guess another twist to it is there was an actual movie made, and I don't remember the name of it, but it has O.J. Simpson in it.
Okay. Where
that's the exact layout of, like, that was the movie.
Yeah.
Where that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that was the exact steps that it happened. So then everyone was like, okay, you're just like quoting a movie.
Right.
My only defense to that, and I've had this theory for a long time, allegedly the CIA has or had, prior to the LA fires, a office in Hollywood. And every time there's something like the aliens, it gets out into the hands of the public, word starts spreading around.
Yep.
The government doesn't want people to know yet. The CIA goes to these big directors and say, hey, we want you to add this into a movie, or we have a movie, this is the idea, you are going to put this out.
Yep.
So then all of a sudden it becomes a big hot hit to put movies out about aliens, and it's all over the place. So then when you go home and you're hanging out with your friends, you're like, guys, I believe in aliens. Everyone's like, bro, you've been watching too many movies.
Yep.
That's not real. It's in a movie. Get out of your head.
Yep.
But the CIA purposely does that to gaslight you, because guess what happens? Later on, aliens are actually real.
Right.
So,
no, I honestly, I buy into that.
Yeah, I 100%.
Look at
my
The
personal, yes.
The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah. I personally believe, my opinion, is that the CIA has an office in Hollywood, and they are feeding stuff to us so that we will turn on our own people.
Right.
So there's the people that watch the movies, it's like, guys, that's a movie, whatever. And then there's the people that are like, no, like, they don't tell everything that's true. And then it causes a bunch of arguments within people.
Right.
So.
Like you and your husband.
Yes. Which we don't watch a lot of movies.
No, right.
He's not a movie person. And he takes things for what it is. He's like, oh, this is what we were taught in school. Like, that's
black and white, right?
Yeah.
No,
there's no reason to dissect things for no reason. And even if the moon landing, there's like another thing that we talked about. He was like, even if it wasn't real, whatever. Like, what is that going to do to my life? It's not going to change anything.
No, right.
Like, it's not even a thought in his mind.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, oh my goodness.
Right.
Dude, like, but did you see the lighting?
No, literally.
Wait,
the flag. Okay. Did you see the flag?
Which, that ties into our next point, because our next point is about the suspicious visual effects.
Yep.
So they're kind of like a 2-in-1.
I want to talk about that flag, bro.
Go off.
Oh my goodness. So it's actually kind of funny. So I think I'm gonna play devil's advocate on this side. I've been saying that a lot, but I think that's, I mean, it's how the whole story is here, because it could be this or it could be that, you know. But so for the longest time, you know, I always thought, well, the flag's flying. Like there's no atmosphere on the moon, so why is the flag flying? There's no wind. It makes no sense.
Are you talking about why it's sticking straight out, or why it was allegedly waving?
Why it looks like it's waving.
Okay, yep.
Also, why is it sticking straight out? Like, that's weird. If there's no atmosphere, it should be hanging down.
So I saw a video where they wanted the flag to stick up.
Yep.
So they had a specific rod made for it, so it holds it.
That's what I saw today. And if you really zoom in on the pictures, you can see that rod on the top of the flag.
Now, it waving, I've seen a few different theories.
Yeah.
Which I'll let you go in before I give my tangents.
Yeah. No, I think that the waving part is suspicious in itself. And yes, even if they do have that rod there, like, think about it, okay? If you hold a piece of paper on the top of it and on the side of it, inside of your house, it's
Yeah.
likely not going to be blowing because, or like nothing's going to be happening with that piece of paper because there's no wind, there's no atmosphere inside of your house. But if you take that piece of paper and you go stand outside, it's likely going to be moving a little bit.
Yeah.
Same thing with the flag on the moon. If there's no atmosphere, that flag should not be moving. It should just be sitting there because it is stabilized on the side of the main part of the pole and then on the tension rod that's on the top of the flag.
Yes.
But the flag's waving. It's clearly moving.
So one of
Or
the
looks like it's moving in the pictures.
one of the explanations I saw was if you watch the video of the moon landing, the recording of the video, because we don't have the original.
Right.
There's one part where I don't know which one of the astronauts is like, which also cracks me up how they just like hop, like they're just like
Yeah,
weigh
they're just
nothing.
like bouncing.
Yeah, so they like slowly bounce by, and
Yeah.
that's why it waved. And they said, "Oh, well, he just bounced by it. That's why it waved. It created a little
Right.
movement." Which okay. Another one was when they were putting it. It looked like it was doing that when they were putting it in the ground, and they're like, "Well, that's because they were trying to screw it into the ground, and they were having a hard time. So when they were doing that, it was moving."
Right.
But it was also doing that when no one was running by.
My thing is, every picture that I've seen of this flag, it looks like it's moving. Every picture that I've seen. If anybody has a picture out there where that flag is standing still, no, it looks like there is no movement, no wrinkles, nothing, please send it to our email.
One of the other things that I read from other theorists, they
Yeah.
believe it was moving because it was a studio fan or an air conditioning draft causing it to move
Yeah, I'm sure.
because it was done in a studio.
Yeah.
The only thing that I saw from NASA, their defense, was that because the astronauts were twisting the pole into the surface.
Yeah.
But okay, I get it when they are physically doing that,
No,
but
right.
when they let go and they're not.
And there's nobody around in the flag. Like, it's a picture of just the flag. There's literally nobody touching the poles, bro.
Yeah.
Like, why is it moving?
What's your reasoning?
All right. I guess here's my portion of debunking, but from what I read on another website was all of the wrinkles could have just been from them storing it on their 4-day trip to the moon.
Which totally makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I could see that.
Yeah.
Like if you take down a flag, or let's say, okay, you're putting a new American flag up at your house, you take it out of the package, it's got a bunch of wrinkles in it.
Oh yeah, and I'm not gonna iron it.
No. Like,
You
no.
think they're to take it on a trip through all this whatever that they're going through to get out to the moon?
Right. They're worried about their jet propulsion rather than the wrinkles.
Yeah,
in the
they're trying to
American flag.
survive this mission.
Right.
So they pull the flag out of whatever storage they got.
Right.
It's gonna be a little wrinkled. They're not gonna be like, well, let's iron it to make it look good. They're just trying to get it on the moon.
No,
That's
right.
their only concern.
Yes. Right. So yeah, I get that.
What about the shadows in the pictures?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. So, from what I was reading online, I found the Royal Museums of Greenwich. That was pretty much where I got a lot of information from them. They had some really good stuff on their website. So if you guys have a chance, check that out. There's a lot of good stuff on there. But I read on there, and they said that if the sun was the only light source, the shadows in all of the pictures should have been parallel, and they
I
weren't.
read the same thing.
They weren't.
No.
You can see, like, there's one specific picture of one of the astronauts, and then there's a pole next to it, which I'm assuming is the flagpole. If you look, the shadows are slightly angled to the left. They should be right behind them. They should be right on top of them. You know what I'm saying? They should look like they're standing straight up, but they don't. The flag looks distorted to the left, and the astronaut looks distorted to the left.
Yeah, I read the same thing too. And this movie director was on the Joe Rogan podcast, Bart Sibrel.
Yep.
You guys should listen to that episode. It's pretty interesting what he has to say. A lot of stuff. But one of the things he was saying was that it looks like lighting you would have in a studio lighting.
Yeah.
Shadows appear to bend or go in different directions, and that only happens when you have multiple light sources.
Yep.
Now, NASA's defense for that, okay, one source is the sun.
Yep.
But there was also lights on their landing ship.
Yeah.
There was also lights on their helmets.
Yep.
So there are multiple light sources coming. How strong are those light sources to create shadows just like the sun? I don't know.
Right.
But that is their reasoning for it, and I kind of can see that.
Yeah,
but
I
then
can see
also from a movie director looking at it,
Right.
saying that the lighting looks similar, I know
Right.
I have a hard time to. That one's kind of like if like I don't look at the photos and be like, oh my gosh, that's proof. To me, it's kind of like I could see how there's other reasonable light sources that
Right.
would make sense.
No, yeah, for
'Cause
sure.
Why would they go up there without any other lighting?
Right. No, yeah, I'm with you on that one. When I was reading too, they were saying, artists and directors and movie people, they've been playing around with visual effects of 3D objects and trying to make them appear in 2D for years. Like even before this all happened. So like they would know what they're doing. They would know how to angle it, like, you know what I'm saying? You would think that if it was staged, they would be on it. They'd be like, "Oh no, this is what it needs to be."
Exactly. Also, another defense that I saw was that NASA said that uneven terrain can create an illusion.
I don't know how I feel about that one. Like, okay,
But
and like that's how I feel like and
yeah, like one of the things that I hear that's kind of like another back to NASA is like, okay, well, you're saying it does that, but then again, if the only source is the sun,
right.
even if it's uneven terrain, it's all still going to be parallel. It's not going to change the
Right.
direction of the shadows. It's just going to,
Correct.
it's not going to create like, but they're saying like it creates like this weird illusion. It's like, well, have you ever been outside where there's a bunch of,
Right.
yeah, like if you're out hiking or whatever and then you look at the shadows, it doesn't like
Right.
create like a weird illusion, like, oh, where's the light coming from? It's like, no, you all know it's coming from the same spot.
Right. It's coming from
Like,
the
oh my gosh,
sun.
there's a tree. Where's the light coming from?
Right. No, right. Yeah, and I mean too, another thing that I had read was, you know, these artists that are saying that, you know, they've been playing around with 3D objects for years. They were also saying that we could really reproduce those exact pictures on Earth if we really wanted to.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be hard.
Yeah.
Again, throw up a studio, throw some sand down, some gravel maybe, ground up rock.
That was another, Bart Sabrell was saying how if you look at their photos, all the photos have been edited now, so they
Yeah.
look a little bit different, but if you actually, they still have the originals.
Yeah.
If you look at the originals, the sand has like this brownish color to it.
Yep.
Now, which is similar to something you'd see in like a desert.
Yeah.
If you look at new photos, they've all been edited to look almost like a bluish gray color.
Yep.
And the reason allegedly that they did this was because the original photos, the sand did not match the backdrop, which is like a bluish gray color. So they took photos that they made in the studio,
Yeah.
released them, then pulled everything back, had everything photo edited,
Yeah.
so it all matches now.
Yeah.
But then another theory back to that I've heard was that depending where you're at in the moon, it looks different. And because
Yeah.
they had multiple missions, they went to different sections.
Yeah.
And the coloring could be different depending where you're going. But that doesn't explain why they would edit those original photos.
Not right. Yeah. Well, and I mean too, like going along with that point that you just had, I did read too that, you know, on the moon, like they were trying to get to the south pole of the moon, and because it's like all like they called it water ice.
Okay.
I don't know what the difference between water and ice versus water ice is, to be completely honest, but that's what they were calling it.
Half melted?
I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever.
Go for it.
Anyways, but so like they were trying to get to that point just to discover that different terrain, but I don't know if they ever successfully did it. But yeah, I want you to tell your story that you were telling me earlier.
Okay, so I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast that had Bart Sabrell on it, and he says that he knows for a fact the moon landing was fake. Like, it's Joe Rogan was like, oh, allegedly, you know, and he was like, no, like for a fact, like I have proof.
Right.
The proof was taken by the CIA, but I have proof.
Right.
And he goes into this whole story about how because he was a movie director, he had this whole studio, and he found in his studio an original video of the moon landing. Yeah. Now, there are, as far as we know, there is no living original videos anymore. It was all somehow lost or destroyed. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
And so there's only like recordings of the recordings, but he has like one recording, like live recording from the original one.
Yep.
And when he found it, he was like shaking, freaking out. He was like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Yeah. Well, immediately he calls this friend of his and he's like, hey, this is what I found. What do I do? And he's like, oh my goodness, you need to go to CNN with this evidence right away. And as they're talking, he says the phone line cuts out.
Yeah.
Like loses connection.
Yep.
He's freaking out, goes, runs, hops in his car. And he's like, I'm going straight to CNN. He starts driving. And as he's driving, there's like this like blacked out SUV he sees.
Yep.
And they're like kind of following him, but he thinks it's in his head. He's going, and all of a sudden his vehicle like dies out, like cuts out. Yep. Electric, doesn't run. So he gets out, runs, hails a cab, gets in this cab directly to CNN. Gets to their studio, goes, there was like a back entrance he was going to go through. And as he was going to go through to hand over this video, he gets like, his head gets covered, so he can't see anything, and they like kidnap him. And he says they put this like it was almost like a hospital bracelet on him.
Okay.
And he said within like a couple minutes, he felt like he was on LSD. Like there was something in this bracelet that like drugged him.
Which, if he's saying he felt like it was on LSD, he must be a frequent flyer with the drug.
Yeah, he must have experimented at some point.
If you listen to the podcast, you might get
it tracks. This guy seems like he's off his rocker,
right.
Which makes me feel like a lot of the stuff he's like, this story is kind of iffy to me. Yeah. Anyways, continuing with his story, and listen to the podcast for yourself because I might be like off on some of these facts, but this is how I remember it. So again, go to his podcast to like double check what I'm saying. Anyways, so they put these handcuffs on him. He feels like he's on LSD. They throw him into this van, and he says he can kind of hear them talking like, "Oh, do you have it?" And then the other guy's like, "No, I thought you had it." And he was like, in his head, he's like, they're talking about this tape, and they wanted it. Eventually they like release him. Oh no, Joe Rogan goes, "Well, how'd you get out of their custody?" And he goes, "Oh, I escaped."
Okay,
he's like,
bro.
"What?" He's like, "How'd you escape CIA custody?" And he goes, "It's a long story. You have to read my book." Doesn't explain it, so you have to read his book. I guess.
Little subtle plug.
Yeah, he over and over again. He's like, "Read my book. He's like, again, you got to read my book to know.
So no subtlety in the plug.
So this man has the original moon landing video. Goes to CNN, is kidnapped. First, he outruns them, hails a cab, then is kidnapped, put on an LSD type drug, and then he escapes their custody for an unknown reason, unless you read his book. He goes and immediately pees in a cup because he says, I got them. I'm going to get my test results, see what they drugged me with, and I'm going to release it to CNN right away. I don't know why he keeps going back to them.
It didn't go so hot for you the first time. Try different one. Maybe Fox.
Pees in a cup, gives it to a friend, and says, "Hey, I need you to put this into this lab, but I want you to use your name. I don't want it to be under my name. I don't want anything coming up, and have it tested." So next week comes by. Gets a call from his friend. He goes, "Hey, bad news. There's a break-in at the lab over the weekend." And he was like, "Oh no, like what happened? What did they take?" He goes, "The only thing that they took was your piss test. It's the only thing that was stolen."
Wow.
And he's like, and it was under another name. Right. So this lab was like, "Take your business elsewhere. Like, we want nothing to do with you."
Yeah.
So then he was like, well, like at that point, he's like, well, I had evidence. I have evidence. Had it. And then the CIA freaking took it, escaped them. But, they're doing all this stuff. Like, and in my head, I just have a hard time like, okay, so they took the thing from you. Why do they care about your pee? You're going to go to CNN with your pee and be like, this man claims that he has an original video and his piss test said that he was on LSD. People are going to be like, okay, he's a druggie. Like,
no, right.
Why would you even post that story?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I think it's funny, and I also think it's pretty good that it's a good inclusion.
Yeah, it's a very entertaining story. When I was listening to his story, at first I was like, okay, like this guy's got something good, and the more I heard it, I'm like, this guy's off his rocker.
This guy's nuts.
But it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
And he does have some good points on the podcast. It's definitely worth listening to. But yeah, that story was cracking me up.
Yeah, no, like I'm just not sure I believe him after that.
Also, one other thing, which I'll get on the tangent of this so it makes sense. In the beginning of his podcast, he's talking about when you are on the moon, there's like these meteorites that are constantly flying around.
Yep.
And they're like so small, they're like a grain of sand.
Mm-hmm.
I forget, there's like a specific name for them. So these like grain of sand type meteorites are like flying around. And when you are on the moon, over 24 hours, there's a 50% chance you will be hit and killed by one.
Yeah.
I have 2 points to this. So one of them, he says, okay, so 50% chance in a 24-hour period you will be killed by this grain of sand.
Right.
That's flying at like millions of miles an hour.
Okay.
So if you were there for a total of 3 days,
you
have a 150% chance of being 150% chance of being killed. And I was listening to this podcast with my husband, and my husband's like, this man doesn't know how to do math. And then once, and it went over my head until my husband said it, and I was like, oh my goodness. So like this is one of the things he says off the bat. And Joe Rogan doesn't even correct him.
No, right.
So it's like, okay, well, how credible is this guy? If he's throwing out all this science and throwing out all these things, but then he's like, oh yeah, well, 24-hour chance of 50% chance, 50, 50, 50, that's 150. It's like, no, you still have a 50% chance. You're just there for 3 days. It's still 50% chance every single day you're there. It's not like, that's not like over a guarantee you will die.
No, right. It's like, okay, bro, like, yeah, you know how to do math. You know how to multiply. Good job. But you might need to work on your probability skills.
And my other point was, if you get hit with a grain of sand, I don't care if I throw it at you. I don't care if it's at a million miles an hour. How is that going to kill me?
Try picking up 1 grain of sand.
Yeah, exactly.
Impossible.
You can't even pick up a grain of sand. And then not only am I going to throw it at you, but I'm going to pelt it at you or have it. It's going to come from outer space, a million miles an hour. And this grain of sand meteorite is going to hit you and you're not even going to notice it. They're in these little spacesuits. They're probably hitting them nonstop. And they're like, oh, it's like a meteor shower out here. Whatever.
Right.
A little dusting.
No, exactly.
And he's like, this 150% chance to kill you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good, pal.
So some of his points are a little easy
Out
to
there.
Yeah, and his math ain't mathin'.
No, right. Yeah. Multiplying, on point. Probability, less than par.
Yeah.
Not great.
And then I had another point too. So kind of on the moon rock we mentioned earlier about how they brought back like 824 pounds of it.
Yep.
So that was between all 6 missions. From what I read, NASA stated that they brought that to test it, and they actually, like, kind of out of good faith, they gave it to other countries as well to go ahead and do their labs and do their science.
Yeah.
And all the labs came back and said that it tested positive for being like, which I'm not a scientist, I don't know how this works, but it tested positive for being like not of this planet. So they could tell.
Okay.
Some theories I heard were that they collected meteorites.
Yeah.
So, of course, it would test from not being, like, abnormal properties of this Earth.
No, right. But even that, do we get them here?
I think so.
But,
but I feel like it's one of those things, like, the government, I'm sure they watch everything. So, if, a meteor landed in your backyard, the government's probably going to come and collect it.
100%.
And no one's really going to know about it. You can be like, oh, yeah, well, like, I mean,
unless you're Joe Dirt and you take it around with you.
Exactly.
It turns out to be a pile of dookie.
I haven't seen that movie in such a long time. Oh. I'm cracking up.
That was a good one. Oh, man.
But yeah, I feel like I believe that there'd be, like, it's not a super common thing, but I feel like meteors probably, and it's probably small ones, not like, again, like you'd see in Transformers where it goes and it's like the size of a football field, just like out there and everyone's like, oh my goodness, you didn't hear about that?
And who knows, maybe we get them here now and they're as small as a grain of sand and you think it's a gnat hitting you.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, you ever have where you walk in the woods and all of a sudden there's like a giant thing of gnats, it's like, and like you're just
maybe
like,
it's meteorites.
It's meteorites. All right, you ever watch Kevin Hart?
No.
Oh my goodness. He has one story that he was stand-up story, whatever, that he was talking about. And I don't remember it fully, but I remember there was one thing where he was like, said he like walked into the gnats and he was like freaking out. And then he was like, it's a gnat.
Oh my God.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Tangents. Oh. NASA also stated that between their different like trips out there, they left like retro reflectors. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah.
Which are like special mirrors on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And they allow scientists to bounce lasers off of them to precisely measure the moon's distance. And now they're like used today by observatories around the world. Yeah. So if the moon landing didn't really happen, how do we have those to sit there and like these things are out there on the moon to see? Which I have a hard time. Like, I don't think that.
How do you launch a rover onto Mars?
The same way we launch humans, but it probably makes it because we're not trying to keep anything alive. It's just technology.
So who's to say that didn't happen for the moon and the reflectors?
That's what I'm saying. So, like, I have a hard time believing humans have been on the moon. Man has been on the moon.
Yeah.
I believe we've been able to shoot stuff into space, launch stuff, send stuff to be on the planet, and we have satellites and all that kind of stuff. Like, I believe all of that.
Right.
I just have a hard time believing that a human has been launched out of this world, landed on a planet out in oblivion, steps on it, gets back into a machine, shoots back to Earth, and is walking around.
Yeah.
Like, that's just... And if that technology does exist and this is all real...
Also, the moon's not a planet.
It's like a planet.
The moon is a part of Earth's solar system.
So the sun is also part of the solar system. It's not a planet.
Correct. You thought it was a planet?
I just...
Damn.
No, I don't think it's a planet because I don't think... Like, I guess...
Describe the sun.
Describe a planet to me.
A planet... There's 9 planets, if you include Pluto.
To me, a planet is something that
each planet
things can live on, like living sources and stuff. The moon and...
Right. You couldn't live on the moon.
And you can't live on the sun.
Nope. You cannot.
But... and you can't enter it. Like, Earth, you see the globe, it's not like you land on top of it, you're walking on top of the Earth. Like, no, you go into it.
Correct.
which is it's wild.
I think
oh.
a planet is classified by like if it has its own ecosystem.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
So or like environment, right?
that's a
So
scientific version of what I was saying.
yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so no, the moon is not a planet.
The moon is not a planet. It's a part of Earth's planet
yeah.
presence. Each planet can have their own moon. So like I know
Are there multiple moons?
bruh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So each
Okay.
okay, so some planets have multiple moons.
I'm not good with math. I'm not good with science. I'm not good with a lot of things.
That's fair.
But I do believe this was fake.
You're like, the rest doesn't matter. It's fake. Hold on, let's look it up. So I did find real quick, just while we're still on this topic. So the Earth has one moon.
Okay.
Jupiter has 67.
What?
Saturn has 62. Uranus has 27. And Neptune has 13.
How come we can't see them? Can we?
I don't
Does
know.
their light also reflect over here? Maybe that's why there was multiple shadows, because the moon had other moons reflecting on the moon.
I don't think it works like that.
Oh. Okay, my bad. Never mind.
I don't think so.
Disregard.
I mean, I think we know that they're there, but that's like I don't know. Like you got to think we have to
light
use
years
such
away.
yeah, we have to use such advanced technology to even see like Jupiter or like, we don't get all of the details. We know that it's there. We've seen it roughly, but we don't know exactly what is on that planet. We don't know if there's running water. We don't know if there's like if there's trees and I mean, maybe we do. I don't know, but it's not that advanced like how we are.
That reminds me, did you see recently? I saw photos that they have of Mars, and it shows like little square structures that they were able to see on the planet. And there's like, it looks like sand or whatever is over it, but it almost looks like at one point there was a structure there.
Hmm.
And they're like, does that mean there used to be like a city, or there used to be something, or like there used to be.
And nobody put it there?
Well, no, that's what there's some people
like
having
in today's
theory. Oh no, it's like
Oh.
it's like a square that looks like there was something there at some point.
Hmm.
But I don't know. And there was like a bunch of theories on it. I didn't really get into it, but that was like one thing I saw. Like the common thing is ever is like there was a structure there at some point, because why is there a square, like a square that looks like at one point there was a structure? It's like the leftover from it, because it's not like it was something that was naturally done. Like it is a perfect, and it looks like there could have been structures there at one point.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Elon's going to tell us because we're going to Mars.
And we're painting the American flag on it, baby.
Yep.
But is Mars... So Mars is a planet.
Mars is a planet.
So we enter into it. We don't go on it.
We do both. We enter into Mars's atmosphere, and then we are on the planet if we get there.
So like Earth, you enter their atmosphere, and then you're on Earth.
Correct.
Okay. I'm thinking like... in it, on it, same thing.
In
like
it.
we go, you see the Earth out there, and you enter inside of it. So like Mars, you enter inside.
But like the fact of the matter is, like we're on Earth, and we have never left Earth.
No,
like we have never. Like astronauts, they've left Earth because they've gone into space
and onto the moon.
They're not going onto space; they're going into space because it's the abyss.
See, I feel like you could go into Earth. And right now we are inside.
I mean, like if you're
like technically we're on it, but we're in it. Like
we're not like when you die, you're going into Earth because you're going in the ground.
Yeah, I guess it depends how you look on it. I'm looking at it as like, okay, you see the moon. It is a big. If you guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm showing.
She's showing you a circle,
a sphere.
Right, a sphere. Sorry.
Okay, so I have a imaginary sphere in my hand.
Yep.
So this is the moon.
Yep.
You fly into space.
Yep.
Onto the moon.
Yep.
And then you walk on it.
Correct.
This is Earth.
Yep.
You fly into Earth, and then you're walking around in it.
You fly into Earth's atmosphere.
Yes, and then so this is Earth.
Yep.
And when you enter it, you don't go here and you don't walk on it. You go here on inside of it, and you walk around in it. So you're in. You're inside of the sphere, which is Earth.
Okay.
You get where I'm coming from?
No. No.
Okay.
This
sphere.
is you're not gonna sell me on this. You're just
Earth.
Not.
Sphere.
Yep.
Walk on top.
Yep.
Like the moon.
Yep.
We're not on the outside like that you see from up there.
Correct.
No, we are on the inside of it. We're in the middle of the sphere.
No.
Okay.
No.
Next.
Next point. I mean, I guess that kind of brings us roughly into our next point, which is if we went to the moon once, or twice, or 4 times, according to NASA, why haven't we
Four
been
times
back
successfully.
since? Right.
Yeah,
Why haven't we been back? No, 5. 12, 14, 15, 17, 11.
So should we start off with NASA's reasoning?
Yeah.
So if you ask NASA, they say it's the lack of funding, shifting priorities, and no urgent need to return because they already completed the mission that they meant to complete. So
Yeah.
if it's so expensive, why do we need to go back? We already got what we needed.
Right.
Other priorities.
Fine.
Fair.
Get it. Priorities changed. They're like, yeah, we already got the gold. We're good.
But also, they destroyed everything, so they can't duplicate the same things that they already had.
Correct.
To go back.
Correct.
Which is another thing that's
like
brought
at
up
this
too.
point, if you, this is just me talking. If you have conspiracies going around saying that the moon landing was fake, wouldn't you think that, like, if you've done it once, why don't you just do it again just to prove everybody that it's possible? We have the technology now. Send a camera up there. We got astronauts taking pictures in the International Space Station. We know cameras can make it through. So send a camera up with somebody. Take a picture.
Because maybe that's fake too.
Wow.
I lost you.
Yeah, you lost me on that one.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No,
like,
I get
well,
it.
maybe.
I get it.
That's what I'm saying. I believe that there's stuff up there. I don't know
how advanced it is. Me.
But I don't think that they have the technology. They didn't have the technology in the first place.
Right.
And if they haven't been focusing on it because they thought we never had to do it again.
Yeah.
Why don't they have the technology?
Yeah.
And also, I've heard Elon, because he's talking about going to Mars.
Yep.
He was saying if you were going to, like, go back to the moon, you would have to, like, fuel up so many times and talking about, like, all the stuff that you would need.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what the number was, but, like, the original ships, the fuel capacity that they had compared to what Elon was saying was, like, a quarter of what you'd need to, like, just get there.
Yeah.
So it's like, where did they refuel?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Unless their technology back there was able to get there on less fuel.
But why wouldn't we be advancing from that then? You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's just so many unanswered questions.
Backwards.
No.
And
they're making it seem like we are going backwards.
Correct. It's almost like they're trying to sell us on the fact that we went backwards.
Yeah.
You had the technology, so you're telling me that you're like, no, that's.
And if they wanted to repeat to do the same exact thing with the same exact technology that we had at that time, they can't, because the original blueprints from Saturn V rocket, lunar module, and all the other Apollo hardware, they're all missing. NASA claims that they were either misplaced, destroyed, or thrown out because they were no longer needed. But if you spend
like a historical piece, put it in a museum.
Exactly. And also, you were saying what, $25 billion went into this?
Yeah.
You spent $25 billion of our money.
No, literally.
You spent not that I have that kind of money.
My grandpa's money.
Yeah, but like of our people. You spent $25 billion of your people's money, and you're telling me you have no evidence because, oops, I lost it.
No, literally.
Wait, did you have the intern handling this?
Trash.
Yeah. Be like, oh, well, I misplaced it. How do you misplace something that's worth $25 billion?
No, literally.
The schematics,
and I'm sure
all
it's
of
not
that.
like a little, like, rinky-dink little pen they're throwing away. No, they're throwing away this giant equipment.
What flash drive did I put those blueprints on again?
Right.
Whoops. It's like, go. That floppy disk has to be around there somewhere.
No, right. They didn't even flash drives back then. That's what I'm saying.
Who lost that floppy disk? It's a lot harder to lose shit nowadays.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
I don't.
Let's see. What did you store?
What was technology stored on in 1967? So let's see. It says in 1967, people primarily stored information using punched cards, which were pieces of cardstock with holes punched in specific patterns to represent data, serving as the main method for inputting information into computers at the time. However, the development of the floppy disk by IBM was also underway, marking the beginning of a more portable storage option, although it wouldn't become widely used until later in the decade.
So they had punch cards of this stuff. So you're telling me someone lost punch cards.
Right. Well, and it's like at that point, like they probably do have the physical blueprints. They probably do have actual like cassette tapes with the footage on it. You know what I'm saying? Like VHS tapes, whatever.
Whatever someone should have been. If they're coming out with the new technology. Yeah. And if they're
physical
coming out with
evidence.
two new technologies, someone should have been transferring it, backing it up, and storing it, and like stuff that is worth that much money and is so important. Why
Yeah.
are they not backing it up and putting it in safe spots in case if something happened, this building burns down? Well, we have a backup over here and backup over here. Like that is shit that you need to have like backup on backup on. Like it is important, and like you're just telling me it was all, oh, it was misplaced. Oh, we accidentally destroyed that. Oh, we threw it out because we didn't need it anymore. You're just, oh, here's a blueprint for the rocket. Oh, I just threw it away. I thought we didn't need that anymore.
No, right. Like, let's spend $25 billion, but not figure out how to store our documentation and videotapes and everything properly. Like, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And engineers who worked on the original Apollo,
Mm.
the ones that are left today, some of them were interviewed and they said they wouldn't be able to rebuild the exact same rocket without those documents.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Convenient.
Right. And too bad. I mean, I'm sure everybody's probably passed away at this point that worked on those. So that's a lost cause.
Yeah.
I mean, the astronauts are. I think.
I thought Buzz is still around.
No, I think he died.
I thought there was like one left.
As of February 5th, 2025, Buzz Aldrin is still alive. He's the last surviving member of Apollo 11.
Okay. Yeah.
So Buzz Aldrin, but he didn't work on the rockets.
No, he was just
He just
on
was
it.
like, he's like, yeah, shoot me into space. Yeah, I don't know. So back to what we were saying. So officials say that the priorities just changed, and that's why we haven't been back. Whether it was from the International Space Station being built, Mars was starting to become talks back then. The Vietnam War had started,
Yep.
and the shuttle program, they were actually starting to fire up. So the shuttle program, like you were saying earlier about how they had these one-time use shuttles that they were using. Well, that's when like the Endeavor and like all those other the ones that look like planes.
Yeah.
That's what they were launching, and that's what they were trying to get to make multiple trips to space. That way they didn't have to use a new vessel every single time, which
is what Elon's trying to do now.
Correct. He's trying to redo it and be more aerodynamic, ergonomic, all of the things.
Yep.
So.
And one of the theories that I heard of, or that I read, why we haven't been back since, is that we never actually went in the first place.
Yep.
And then another one was that we found something that made us stay away. So maybe they were out there, saw something.
Yeah.
But devil's advocate to that, why did we go 6 times?
No, right.
Like the first time we successfully made it out there, why weren't they like, we're not going, unless they didn't see it till the last time.
Right.
And that's why they were so shaken up.
Why do you not hear about the other astronauts on Apollo 12?
Yeah, 14, I don't even know their names.
15.
But everyone
17.
knows Buzz and Neil.
Correct.
Everyone.
And is it just because they were the first on the moon? Like, so the other guys are just like chopped liver, but like, I don't know, like, I would still want to hear from them. Like, bro, you went to the moon.
Yeah, you were still there. What did you see? What was it like?
Right. Yeah. I have a couple more key points as to why, like, what I had found, why we haven't been back to the moon since then.
Go for it.
One was obviously cost 2.8, or it was actually 25.8 billion, not 24, 25.8 billion. And then in today's world, like I was saying earlier, it's 318 billion is what it's compared to today. And then also the political priority shifted. Obviously, the Soviet Union is not a thing anymore. Soviet Union came crumbling down, so it's kind of like, oh, well, they were our main competitors. I mean, yeah, we have Russia now, but I don't know. I feel like as far as space goes, Russia and the United States have always, like, no matter what's going on, they've always worked together.
Yeah, we're not really competing against anyone.
No, there's always Russian astronauts and United States astronauts. They're always at the space station together. It's not really a thing anymore. Like, it just is what it is. And then also technological advances. So even though that our technology has gotten better today, it would still take significant development and refinement in order to be able to do that again. Because like you said, there are no blueprints. There's nothing we have to go off of. So yeah, I mean, our best bet now is Elon, obviously.
Yeah.
But if he's trying to build a vessel that is just sustainable even for getting into space, like he has with SpaceX, getting to Mars, he's not worried about the moon. He's worried about Mars. He wants to go to Mars.
And I feel like that's a whole new set of struggles.
Yeah.
I don't understand all the science to it, but it's just so...
It's a lot of physics.
Yeah, and it's so different from Earth, and there's just so many wild things that they have to work around. It's not like that. Like the atmosphere is different. They have to have special ships and suits to protect you from all these different things and the temperatures. And
No, right.
there's just so much that goes into it.
Yeah. Well, and two, I mean, my thing is, I mean, this could be me just speaking ignorantly, but like, how do you know what to prepare for on Mars? Like, how do you know humans can survive even in spacesuits on Mars if you've never been? So then
Exactly.
you have to have people maybe that go there and like test it out. Like, okay, like
That's my biggest thing.
kind of a suicide mission potentially. I don't know.
And
Is it?
there's at least no record of them testing anything alive, like sending monkeys into the space or like there's nothing recorded like that to see like, okay, well if you're gonna send humans, why wouldn't you send a ship with a monkey or something like that to see what happens, to see if they come back before you send a human? Instead you're gonna send a human and they just made it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's never an astronaut that like went during the Apollo missions that just died, that didn't come back. And it's like, oh well, they had this happen to them up there. Like,
No, right. Well,
not
and
that I
two, I feel like whenever I hear Elon and like the talk of Mars and everything, I always like I don't know why, but my mind just goes to like, oh yeah, we're just gonna have like a little shuttle that takes us. Like, oh, you wanna go live on Mars for 20 years? Bet. Okay, and then you can come back to the United States.
like I
And
said with like a cruise ship, like you want to go cruise? No, I kind of want to go to Mars this year. Yeah, I've never gone. Let's go.
right, it's a new
like
vacation spot.
Yeah, like $2,500, buy a ticket, you hop on the shuttle and you go up there and you just start clubbing in Mars.
Chill on Mars, yeah.
And on
Honestly, that'd be pretty sick. I still don't think I would do it, but that'd be pretty dope.
oh, I would not do it.
I don't think I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd pass out for sure. I'd be like, let me know when we get there.
I hate tight spaces. I hate
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
that I had a dream the other night.
Oh,
I had
boy.
a dream.
Oh, I had a dream.
It was just a claustrophobic dream. I had a dream. There was like something going on. We had to get to like a safety spot, and for some reason we had this little like shuttle that was on a lake. And me and my husband jumped in, and I was like, okay, that's like bet, shuts it, fine. He goes to like take off to like drive around in the water, and the second he does, you ever get it in a dream where you like, okay, so he takes off, and I like feeling claustrophobic, and I wanted to tell him like, you got to take me out of this thing, like you got to bring me back.
Yeah.
And I couldn't breathe. Like in my dream, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't breathe, and I'm trying to talk and I cannot speak. And I keep wanting to say, take me back. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, nothing's coming out and I'm losing it.
Oh boy.
And then I wake up.
Right. Of course, naturally.
But
yeah, no, I don't get that. I don't remember my dreams.
None at all? Ever? You don't never wake up and it's like
Rarely. I think I remember my dreams probably like 3 times a year.
We should have an episode about dreams. I think it's fascinating.
I do too. I wish I could have them.
I have learned.
Or maybe I do. I just don't remember.
I think you do. I think that everyone does, but
Yeah.
yeah, some people remember them more than others. I have learned that if I wake up and instantly tell my husband or like I text one of my friends my dream, I remember it clearly. I remember that one because I woke up and I was like, I had a wild dream last night. And he's like, I did too. He didn't remember his, and I was like, this is what happened, and I told him the whole thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, he don't care. He's like, oh, wild. But like I remember it.
Wild.
But I remember it because
Right.
I told him that, and now it's like in my head.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Dream tangent.
Dream tangent.
Do you have any other thoughts on that, or
I don't think so. I mean,
should we head to our closing thoughts?
I think we should. This is where it's going to get good. After all of the stuff that we have talked about today, we've both played devil's advocate. We've both bought into the conspiracy. I feel like we're 50-50 on a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. At least we've been devil's advocate to each other throughout the whole episode, so I'm interested to see where you finally land on.
I believe that we've sent stuff up there. I do not believe we've been on the moon.
Yep.
Maybe we have been since.
Yeah.
But not that they've told us, and I don't know why. I believe that maybe we have the technology now to do it if
Yeah.
we really tried to.
Right.
I don't think we originally actually like landed on the moon. Maybe they were out there, but they weren't like actually on the moon.
Yeah.
I believe NASA has a lot of good points and kind of responses to people about why certain things, lighting, shadows, whatever. I believe
Yep.
NASA has a lot of good responses to that stuff.
Yep.
And I do have a few other points that we could bring up in the closing thoughts on things that just don't make sense to me on why I still have a hard time believing it.
Yeah.
So where do you land?
I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat. I think, do I believe that we actually landed on the moon back in 1967, 68, whatever it was? No, I don't. I don't think that it happened. I don't think that the technology was advanced enough back then to be able to get man to moon. Do I necessarily think that it was faked in a studio? No, not really. but like at the same time, I don't know how else it would be faked. But I mean, too, like you were saying, I think NASA has a lot of great points. I think that every single thing that somebody comes up with, they're right on it. They
Yeah.
have something to fire back with. But also, I do think that there are some points that they have that are flawed. For example, the shadows, that doesn't make sense to me. Like that whole thing, I'm like, whatever. The
Yeah.
whole flag thing, I get it. There's two poles. What I don't get is the atmosphere. Why is there wind?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. Also, it doesn't make sense to me how the cameras were there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't even figure out how to get a colored picture on your TV. You're telling me you're sending a camera into space to film somebody landing on the moon?
And you have the timing to exactly move the camera around to follow everything as
Correct.
they're taking off.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't buy that. Yeah, I think I don't, in my opinion, I just don't think it happened.
So I have a weird point kind of that we didn't bring up that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And this is more just kind of like, I guess it kind of ties into stuff. It's just kind of like fun fact, whatever, weird.
Yeah.
So there was a guy named von Braun. Von Braun? He was a German rocket scientist. So he worked for the Nazi Party developing V-2 rockets during World War II.
Oh boy.
After the war, he was a part of Operation Paperclip,
Okay.
which, that's where they kind of like brought people in from the wartime, even from like Germany and stuff, to work on to help us like advance our technology and stuff like that. So they brought him in, part of Operation Paperclip,
Okay.
to help us advance our whatever missiles and stuff like that, work on them.
Yep.
So he became the lead scientist for NASA's Apollo program.
Okay.
And he played a key role in developing the Saturn V rocket, which allegedly took humans to the moon, or fact,
Right.
what they tell
According
us.
to NASA.
So what's weird about this, one thing, why was an ex-Nazi party scientist the head of our NASA program?
Right. Yeah,
Also,
that's red flag.
so there's like a lot of weird ties with this. Anyways, so he went from building Nazi weapons to leading NASA's moon missions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, red flag. The weird thing to me is he wrote a book. And now this book is a science fiction novel.
Mm-hmm.
But it was called Project Mars.
Okay.
So it was published in 1953,
Okay.
and it was like a technical
So
tale.
before the moon landing.
Yes,
Okay.
it was science fiction, and it was about humans colonizing Mars. So you ready for the kicker?
Interesting.
The leader of Mars in his book, his name is Elon. And like that's such a not
weird.
common name.
Yeah, that makes me feel weird.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And that's like so before the time, like it's just,
Maybe Elon's mom read the book.
and was like, I love that name. He's gonna be a scientist. He's gonna bring us to Mars one day. Your name is Elon.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like one of those weird little,
Yeah, that's
very coincidental. Which again, I don't believe in coincidences, but that's one instance where it kind of like, I feel like a coincidence could be a real thing.
yeah, that's strange.
And maybe he read it as a child and he was like, his name is my name. Like, I'm going to grow up and be the greatest scientist.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt the dude's a freak of a genius. Like, the guy
Yeah.
is so smart.
Yeah.
But the name thing.
It's just odd. Yeah. I don't know. I wanted to bring that up because I like got into that and I was like, oh my goodness, this is wild.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. Very weird.
That one spooks me a little.
Yeah. Really weird.
And especially since the book was in the 1950s. I'm sure too. I wonder how old Elon's mom is.
How old is Elon?
I don't know. Let's look it up.
Also, weird tangent. Doesn't he have like a bajillion children?
Yeah. And he names them X and random numbers.
Functions and
Fun fact, you can name your kids numbers if you really want to.
I didn't know
Z102 point.
I didn't know if this was true, but one of his kids' names was I don't know what you would call that. Like I want to call it a word project, a math problem.
Oh. Okay.
Again, not a math person. So his one kid's name is like a thing, and if you solve it, it's like what his name is. Is that true?
Sorry, I was looking up Elon's mom.
You're fine. I can't explain what one of his kids' names is like a not a math problem, but like a
An equation.
Equation. Yes, it's a math problem. That's
Sure.
yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
Right.
Okay. One of his kids' names is an equation, and if you solve it, whatever the answer is how you say his kid's name. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
That's a little too
All right.
complex for
That's
me.
that's a theory I heard a long time ago,
Yeah.
but like I didn't know how
Would
to
it
pronounce
surprise me?
it.
No.
I didn't know how to pronounce it, and I saw something on that. I'm like, wow, this kid is like.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I would feel so bad because I'd never know how to pronounce his name because I can't do math.
No, literally.
Especially if you're going to get
Also,
into.
what do they do when they go to school? Like the teacher's gonna be like, if they have a substitute teacher
How do
or
you
like the
pronounce your
first
name?
day
I
of
don't know.
school,
Solve it.
Musk.
Yeah, Mr. Musk.
So fun fact, Elon's mom is 76 years old, so she was born in 1948. When did that book come out? 1950?
53.
Yeah.
So unless
Well,
she had a kid when she was.
unless she was reading that book when she was 5 years old, maybe, I mean, she could have read it
And it's stuck
after
in her
that.
head, and she's like, I'm going to name my kid Elon one day. Turns out to happen to be a genius. Happens to also want to lead people to Mars, just like in the book, Elon was the leader of the human colonizing people on Mars.
Yeah. Yeah. And Elon was born in 71. He's 53 right now. Ooh, he's South African. Did you know that?
That makes sense, honestly.
I
Now
didn't know
I
that.
never thought about it, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to talk about was the Van Allen radiation belts.
Okay.
So they're two massive zones of high energy radiation surrounding Earth.
Yep.
So they're made up of charged particles trapped by Earth's magnetic field. So they were discovered in 1958 by James Van Allen, hence the Van Allen radiation belts.
Yep.
And they're considered one of the biggest obstacles for space travel.
Yep.
So my thing is,
That's where the firewalls come in.
yes.
Yep.
So it's supposed to be, according to NASA, when they went through, the radiation was as similar as what you get in like a CT scan. I think
Okay.
that's the. So they said there wouldn't be much, because a lot of people say, well, it's not real because if you went through those radiation belts, they would have been like crazy radiation sickness. They wouldn't have made it through. There was like all these different things on it, and that was like NASA's thing was like, oh well, no, like that wouldn't be that big of a deal because they had it toned down. Like they found a way to get through, and I guess like the protection on their launch was enough where it would be like small radiation.
Amounts.
Yeah. I just have a hard time with that one. It's like, how were they able to protect them from that much radiation? And like I've heard a bunch of different things too about like the amount of like where exactly they entered it. There's different radiation levels and the amount of radiation. Like NASA says one thing, and I have a hard time with that whole, like, I mean, I don't understand it. Again, not good on science.
Yeah.
But I just have a hard time with, like, believing that there's, like, that high level of radiation and there was, like, no effect to them.
No, right. Well, I mean, too, like, even if you think back to, like, Chernobyl, that happened in 1986, and their fix was building a giant concrete dome around it because they didn't know how else to handle it.
Exactly.
So, like, you're telling me you figured out how to, like, get somebody through, like, the highest levels of radiation possible.
And like, this tiny little launch ship thing that, like,
no,
also is very hard.
A piece of aluminum.
Which is very hard for me to believe as well. Like, just look at photos of what they used to get out there and come back, and it's like, really, that's what they use, and that protect them from radiation that broke through the atmosphere, that travel at, I don't know how fast those things travel. They travel fast.
Really fast. Really fast.
Yeah, it's just...
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No, not at all. Yeah. And
now, I can understand if they do have proper technology to get through those radiation belts because technology has advanced.
Yes.
But, like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
One final point that I had.
Yep.
This was also brought up by, on the Joe Rogan podcast, the one with Bart Sabrell.
Okay.
So he was talking about how the rocket, where they were staying, they had air conditioning running on it because on the moon, the temperature's like, I think the external temperature when they were walking around was like 250 degrees.
Oh, geez.
So
you would think it would be colder.
Yeah. But for some, I guess it was warmer. So it's like 250 degrees. So they had AC running in the launcher the entire time kept at 72 degrees.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hot. That was like a good temperature.
Yeah.
What they were using to run this AC for 3 days? Car batteries. If I leave the dome light on in my car overnight, I can't start the bitch in the morning.
Right.
But you're telling me you ran an AC unit for 3 days
to your space shuttle
when the outside temperature is 250 degrees. When it is 90 degrees outside, my thermostat's struggling to keep it at 74.
Yeah.
Like, if I have it set to that, it's like always a couple degrees above. And you're telling me 250 and staying at 72 on car batteries.
No, literally.
And that's like
You
not
want to
even like
spend $25 billion to fix my thermostat in my house to figure out how to get it to keep up with the heat outside?
yeah.
It don't even get 200 degrees.
And that's like car batteries from like not even like the technology of today, which I'm sure they've gotten a little bit more advanced. And even like
Correct.
Joe Rogan had a good point. He's like, my Tesla, if I drive it like at a good gas mileage or electric range, it gets like 350.
Yeah.
For a full charge.
Right.
350 miles for a full charge.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that they had AC running for 3 days on car batteries. Get out of here.
I call baloney.
That's one thing where I was like, "Ooh, okay, that's red flag."
Yeah, that's
I have
a
a
red
hard time
flag.
with that one. And also, if it's 250 degrees, what kind of coating did they have on their suits to protect them? Because they were walking around out there, they weren't breaking a sweat, nothing.
All right.
And if it's 250 degrees around you, I mean that's hot.
Right. Well, and two, yeah, I mean, well, their suits are huge, so who knows what else going on inside of them things. And especially in the old days, like the suits were massive. It looked like they were carrying like 20 bricks on their back.
It almost kind of looked like the ones in Monsters Inc. when they throw the sock on the guy.
2319.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They look like the squad, the yellow people.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it kind of shocks me that it's actually that hot. I was thinking it would be cold because it's
Which maybe again, this guy is not super reliable on his logic, so maybe it wasn't actually that hot. I just kind of took what he said and was like, "What?"
No, right. But then again, too, how would you, unless you're standing up there with a thermometer, how would you accurately gauge? I mean, I guess, yeah, you could use like,
According to Google, the temperature on the moon can vary drastically depending on whether it's day or night. Daytime temperatures reaching around 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 121 degrees Celsius, and that's near the equator, and plummeting to negative 208 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 133 degrees Celsius at night, due to the lack of atmosphere to retain heat. So it goes from 250 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 208.
right? But then my next question would be, how do you determine if it's day or night on the moon? Because the moon is constantly orbiting the Earth, and the Earth is orbiting the sun. You know what I'm saying?
No, because I don't know plant science.
No, that's fair.
Planet
Okay.
science.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that does. Okay.
I guess
so
it would
let's
just
ask
depend
Google
on
how.
like the alignment, like how we have like the solar eclipse where Earth directly or the moon directly lines up with the sun. Is that their nighttime, so they get an eclipse?
Okay, but then
nighttime?
Google also says the moon doesn't have day or night like the Earth since it doesn't rotate.
Well, that's
So
what I'm
how does
saying.
it have day or night temperatures, but it doesn't rotate? So it doesn't have, unless they're talking about one side and the other side. But like, okay, Google, what?
Yeah. Okay. So then that makes more sense. If the moon is fixated or fixed into one spot,
Okay.
the Earth moves. The Earth rotates. The Earth moves around the sun, and the Earth is also on an axis and rotates itself. So that's why we have day and night, is from the Earth rotating itself. Now, when it rotates around the sun, it's rotating constantly. So it's like this, right? I'm showing Nelly the diagram or how it's working here.
Yep.
So the Earth is rotating like this, right? So as it's doing this spin right here, it's day and night, right? That's how you know, like, sun, moon, whatever. So the sun must be here, the moon must be here, opposite sides, and then whatever the Earth is rotating, that's how you know if it's day or night. Well, then the Earth is also rotating around the sun, and that's how you get the seasons.
Seasons.
Yeah.
Does the moon get different? No, because the moon doesn't get seasons.
The moon's fixated.
Okay. Yep. Oh, yeah, because this says to tell if it's day or night, you need to look at which side of the moon is facing the sun.
Yes.
As only the side facing the sun experiencing daylight.
So then they would have
half of the moon is always in daylight while the other half is always in darkness. Meaning day on the moon is when the area you're looking at is directly illuminated by the sun, and night is when it's facing away from the sun.
Okay.
Either way, it is 250 degrees where they were at. I guess it was daytime.
Okay.
For 3 days on car batteries, keeping it at a crisp 72 degrees.
Yeah. I call baloney.
Yeah. Which maybe they had special car batteries that they don't sell to general population because they cost billions of dollars and they lost the schematics on how to do it.
It's all part of the 25 billion.
I mean, if they could just come out with those batteries again, they would probably make that 25 billion back.
Sign me up.
Yeah, because I leave the lights on in my car accidentally all the time.
Yeah, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Good? You got anything else?
That's all I have. I guess the only thing I have to say is I'm 50-50 on this. In my opinion, I have a hard time believing. I have a hard time
I
believing it was real.
I'm in the same boat.
But there's a lot of stuff that makes sense.
There's a lot of stuff that makes sense. There are a lot of points that I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Actually.
It just doesn't all make sense.
But then there's some things that I'm like, meh, I feel like that's a stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the real question is, will we ever know?
I believe one day we will have a second Trump who will sign something like he did with JFK and MLK to release all the findings on the moon landing, and we will know.
Maybe we should write Trump and tell him to declassify all of the moon landing documentation, if there is any.
Either that, or they'll wait till the next pandemic. So everyone's freaking out about that, and the government's going to be like, by the way, the moon landing was faked, and people are going to be like, yeah, whatever. COVID 2.0.
No, literally. Yeah.
I feel like one day, maybe not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end of our lifetime where I'm so old I don't even care.
No, I'll always care.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, I knew you suckers were riding something.
Walking up there with our walkers. I told you.
Right. But yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode. Hope you guys liked it. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. It's up for you to decide.
I definitely learned a lot.
I learned a lot too. Yep, I learned a lot. We had some physics lessons. We had some math lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were all over the board with this one, but I think it was fun. It was a fun episode.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoy it.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, give us all the things so we can keep pumping these out for you.
Yeah, we're excited. We got some good stuff lined up for you guys, so we hope you keep tuning in and keep listening to us and get this thing up and running. We're excited. So
until then, we'll see you next Friday.
See you next Friday.
Bye.